obviously to have hit the Sunday Times bestseller list at #1 straight out the bag, that's quite daunting, especially since you can't really go up from there. Is the only way is down. So it was all very much a case of acclimatizing and trying to see how that works. But then obviously when we come to write, when it came to writing the Shadow Key, I had that pressure there as well. So the Shadow Key, the idea came in 2006, so way before Pandora and even before the first shelf novel. So I was very conscious of the fact that I was returning to an idea I wanted to develop, but I knew it's still Georgian. There are still Gothic elements. I describe Pandora as being more of a light feminine Gothic, whereas the Shadow Key is a bit more of a masculine dark Gothic. But I had that in my head the whole time. I was very conscious of the fact that I was writing a book that probably wasn't quite the same as Pandora, and obviously it didn't need to be, but it was a pressure there. And so I do remember feeling incredibly stressed and worrying how on earth I was going to get it done. And considering I wrote Pandora in 10 months, I thought it would be a bit of a breeze this second. It wasn't. It took 2.5 years. So yeah, two very, very different experiences, and all off the back of this amazing one. And it just has a domino effect in so many different areas of your life. With the Shadow Key, it's very the published version is very, very different to the original concept. I live in Wales now. At the time I had the idea, I wasn't living in Wales, but I was studying in Wales. But my mum lived in Wales. So I was, during the term holidays, I would come back and stay with my mum. And we'd often go walking in the hills that's just behind the house. And we did this at all points of the year, but the catalyst specifically for the Shadow Key was one walk on, I think actually it was Christmas Eve, to be perfectly honest. Now it was a very dry day. It was, but it was very overcast, and there was a mist rolling through the hills. Now, if you consider Wales in winter, you're looking at the bones of trees. You're looking at hard, muddy fields that they've been churned over by the cattle. And so I was kind of walking this landscape that looked very Hound of the Baskervilles-esque. And also in 2006, at the time, there had been sightings of large cats in the area, so panthers. And actually, if you were to go on the internet and search Puma Watch Snowdonia, you would actually see that these events are still occurring, but they've been particularly prevalent in 2006. And I just had this little image in my head as I was walking up through these hills with the mist rolling off, these churned up fields and these trees just looking very ominous, of a large black panther coming through the mist. Now, in Welsh myth and mythology, there is a large black animal creature. Essentially, it's the Welsh version of the English black shuck. It was a very large dog. Again, very Hound of the Baskervilles-ish, I'm going to be honest, and it's called the Gwyllgi. And I just wondered, was there a way I could link the real black panthers that were being sighted around the area and think of it as an origin story, but the villagers were potentially thinking it was a supernatural occurrence. Now, for anybody who's read the book or will read the book, you will know that this does not appear in any shape or form in the novel, but that was essentially that kind of initial catalyst. And I played about with various different things. I wanted to get a lot of the Welsh myth and mythology in there as much as possible. So I played with the idea of the Gwyllgi and the Mari Cloud, wishing wells, funeral rites and all that, and sin eaters, all that kind of thing. And there's so much that ended up on the cutting room floor, which I'm really, really upset about, because it's just there are just so many wonderful, rich cultural elements I could have put in, and I just couldn't do it. I would also play with the idea of using the tarot, but eventually I just sort of came to the conclusion that these were just all going to be a little bit too much when we compared it to the occult element that I was always planning on putting in, which was, again, I don't want to do too many spoilers, but the Demons of Solomon, the Lesser Keys of Solomon. I really wanted to kind of play about with that. That came about because in 1801 there was a man named Francis Barrett who had written essentially a compendium of magical history, and he'd called it the Magus. And I really wanted to play about with that as well. And I even considered, do I have Francis Barrett as a character? And do I have these things happen to him which maybe prompted him to write the Magus? So there was a whole massive load of ingredients going on there, but essentially the bones of the novel stayed the same. I wanted it to be set in deepest, darkest Wales. I wanted it to really have a Gothic vibe. I threw as many tropes at the novel, I suppose, as possible. So we have the big house, we have the hero who wants to discover the outsider, essentially, the hero outsider who wants to discover the truth. We have the hostile villagers, we have the mad woman in the attic, and it was fun to really, you know, wrap it all up in a way that worked, even though the structural edits were a nightmare. As I said, so many things that I had to get rid of, but I knew in the end that what went needed to go. The story is essentially the tale of Henry Talbot, who is a disgraced surgeon from London who has been dismissed from his job, and the only position that he can find is as a village doctor in a remote area of Wales. And reluctantly he goes up to Wales, and he finds, as I said, hostile villagers and very strange symbols that are appearing around the house and on items that he thinks is very, very bizarre. And he soon finds that his predecessor has died under mysterious circumstances, and also, having assisted the Bow Street runners in their investigations, he can't quite help getting involved. But Lynette Trezelyan, who is the mistress of Penhelig, she's extremely protective of the villagers, of her land. She really kind of kicks back at Henry, and she's very progressive for her time. She is essentially been left to her own devices, and, you know, she wears men's clothes. She is extremely headstrong. She's got a proper temper on her, and so she really doesn't want Henry to upset the apple cart, so to speak. But they end up kind of clashing in ways that, yeah, I think they do start to see some good in each other and begin to work as a team. And again, without doing too many spoilers, essentially Henry's investigations, the things that they uncover together means that ultimately their destinies become entwined in ways neither of them thought possible. And it's just this kind of caper around this fictional village, Penhelig, and dark and dastardly deeds and elements of the occult, and a kind of a push and pull between the is there and is it or isn't it supernatural. There's loads of questions being raised, and obviously we have a dastardly cousin as well, and some very unscrupulous characters making messes of things as well. I try to keep things ambiguous. I try to get the reader to question, is this real? Isn't it real? I do lean a lot on the five senses in my writing. So we have a sense of foreboding, we have a stench of sulphur, and sulphur, it could either be stagnant water, or it could be a sign of some sort of devilment going on. You know, a lot of the things that I include in the novel can easily be explained away, but I want the reader to wonder, actually, can we do that? Do we want to do that? Is it this? Is it that? And so I think I try to lean into the power of suggestion more than anything else, rather than directly stating it. And I think I've always preferred to do something like that. I like to let the reader decide for themselves. Apart from one particular scene near the end, yeah, it's very much a case of it could be this or it could be that.